Josh was excited. As his first official duty as a parish priest, fresh out of school, he got to officiate his first funeral for a homeless man with no friends or family. The young priest vowed to give him the most loving send-off, the love he probably missed in this life. The funeral was to be held at a new cemetery across town, and this man was the first to be laid to rest there. New to the area, Father Josh arrived late, but noticed a few workers gathering around the grave opening. The young and enthusiastic priest poured out his heart and soul as he gave his sermon and recited the prayers. His voice was so evocative and powerful that he brought the cemetery workers to tears. When the service was over, the priest thanked the workers for listening and walked to his car. As he opened the door, Josh heard one worker say to the other, "I've never seen anything like that before, and I've been putting in septic systems for over 20 years." Some time ago, a man had two sons. As they got older, everyone quickly realized that Jackson was very sharp, while Blake was about as sharp as a spoon. They were both loved very much and cared for. As time went by, the father got sick and eventually passed away. Jackson called his brother on the phone and told him, "Listen, I have an enormously important business meeting I must attend, but I will get on the first flight home. Here are my credit card details. Please make sure Dad looks his best and gets everything money can buy for his funeral. Spare no expense." He wasn't sure this was a great idea, given that Blake was, well, Blake, but he had no one else to call. Surprisingly, Blake took care of everything and did it with a rather decent budget. Jackson was pleasantly surprised, and the funeral went well, if a sad and emotional affair for all. A few months later, Jackson calls Blake again. "Listen," he says, "I don't want to make accusations or anything, but could it be that you are still using my card for about $300 every month? I can see it here on my credit report." "Of course not," said Blake, insulted. "I would never steal from you. You know that." "Yeah, I do," said Jackson. "But how do you explain these?" "Oh," said Blake, "I bet those are for Dad's tux. You said you wanted him to look his best, so I rented the most expensive suit in town." An extraordinarily handsome man decided he had the God-given responsibility to marry the perfect woman so they could produce children beyond comparison. With that as his mission, he began searching for the perfect woman. After a diligent but fruitless search up and down the East Coast, he started to head west. Shortly thereafter, he met a farmer who had 3 stunning, gorgeous daughters that positively took his breath away. So he explained his mission to the farmer, asking for permission to marry one of them. The farmer simply replied, "They're all looking to get married, so you came to the right place. Look them over and select the one you want." The man dated the first daughter. The next day, the farmer asked for the man's opinion. "Well," said the man, "she's just a wee bit, not that you can hardly notice, but pigeon-toed." The farmer nodded and suggested the man date one of the other girls, so the man went out with the second daughter. The next day, the farmer again asked how things went. "Well," the man replied, "she's just a wee bit, not that you can hardly tell cross-eyed." The farmer nodded and suggested he date the third girl to see if things might be better. So he did. The next morning, the man rushed in, exclaiming, "She's perfect, just perfect. She's the one I want to marry." So they were wed right away. Months later, the baby was born. When the man visited the nursery, he was horrified. The baby, while cute, had the ugliest face he ever saw. He rushed to his father-in-law, asking how such a thing could happen, considering the parents. "Well," explained the farmer, "she was just a wee bit, not that you could hardly tell, pregnant when you met her." A pretty blonde woman is driving down a country road in her new sports car when something goes wrong and it breaks down. Luckily, she happens to be near a farmhouse. She goes up to the farmhouse and knocks on the door. When the farmer answers, she says to him, "It's Sunday night and my car broke down. I don't know what to do. Can I stay here for the night until tomorrow when I can get some help?" "Well," drawls the farmer, "you can stay here, but I don't want you messing with my sons Jed and Luke." She looks through the screen door and sees 2 men standing behind the farmer. She judges them to be in their early 20s. "Okay," she says. After they have gone to bed for the night, the woman begins to get a little horny, just thinking about the 2 boys in the room next to her. So she quietly goes into their room and says, "Boys, how would you like for me to teach you the ways of the world?" They say, "Huh?" She says, "The only thing is, I don't want to get pregnant, so you have to wear these rubbers." She puts them on the boys, and the three of them go at it all night long. 5 years later, Jed and Luke are sitting on the front porch, rocking back and forth. Jed says, "You remember that blonde woman that came by here about 5 years ago and showed us the ways of the world?" "Yeah," says Luke. "I remember." "Well, do you care if she gets pregnant?" "Nope," says Luke. "I reckon not." "Then let's take these bloody things off." Two guys are walking through the woods and come across this big, deep hole. "Wow, that looks deep." "Sure does. Toss a few pebbles in there and see how deep it is." They pick up a few pebbles and throw them in and wait. No noise. "Geez, that is really deep. Here, throw one of these great big rocks down there. Those should make a noise." They pick up a couple of football-sized rocks and toss them into the hole and wait. And wait. Nothing. They look at each other in amazement. One gets a determined look on his face and says, "Hey, over here in the weeds, there's a railroad tie. Help me carry it over here. When we toss that sucker in, it's got to make some noise." The two drag the heavy tire over to the hole and heave it in. Not a sound comes from the hole. Suddenly, out of the nearby woods, a goat appears, running like the wind. It rushes toward the two men, then right past them, running as fast as its legs will carry it, then leaps in the air and into the hole. The two men are astonished by what they've just seen. Then out of the woods comes a farmer who spots the men and ambles over. "Hey, you two guys seen my goat out here?" "You bet we did. Craziest thing I've ever seen. It came running like crazy and just jumped into this hole." "Nah," says the farmer, "that couldn't have been my goat. My goat was chained to a railroad tie." A fellow walks into a bar very down on himself. As he walks up to the bar, the bartender asks, "What's the matter?" The fellow replies, "Well, I've got these two horses. Sniff, sniff. And well, I can't call them apart. I don't know if I'm mixing up riding times or even feeding them the right foods." The bartender, feeling sorry for the guy, tries to think of something he can do. "Why don't you try shaving the tail of one of the horses?" The man stops crying and says, "That sounds like a good idea. I think I'll try it." A few months later, he comes back to the bar, in worse condition than he was before. "What's the matter now?" the bartender asks. The fellow, in no condition to be in public, answers, "I shaved the tail of one of the horses." Sob, sob. "But it grew back and I can't tell them apart again." The bartender, now just wanting him to shut up or leave, says, "Why don't you try shaving the mane? Maybe that will not grow back." The fellow stops crying, has a few drinks, and leaves. A few months later, the fellow is back in the bar. The bartender has never seen anybody in this sorry of a state. Without the bartender even asking, the fellow breaks into his problems. I shaved the sob mane of one of the sniff horses, and it grew back." The bartender, now furious at the guy's general stupidity, yells, "For crying out loud, just measure the stupid horses. Perhaps one is slightly taller than the other one." The fellow cannot believe what the bartender has said and storms out of the bar. The next day, the fellow comes running back into the bar as if he had just won the lottery. "It worked, it worked," he exclaims. "I measured the horses and the black one is 2 inches taller than the white one." Two Texas farmers, Jim and Bob, are sitting in a bar, enjoying beers. Jim turns to Bob and says, "You know what? I'm going to go to college." He then leaves the bar and makes his way over to the local college. He has met with the dean of administration, who is explaining to Jim what classes he is going to take. "All right, Jim, you're going to take 4 classes," the dean says. "English, math, science, and logic." "Logic?" Jim asks. "What the hell is that?" "Here, I'll give you an example. Do you own a weed whacker?" Proudly, Jim responded, "Yes, I do." "Well, if you own a weed whacker, then logically speaking, you own a lawn," the dean said. "Yes, yes, I do have a lawn." "Well, if you have a lawn, then logically speaking, you own a house." "Yes, yes, I do have a house." "And if you have a house, then logically speaking, you have a family." "Yes, yes, I do have a family." "And if you have a family, then logically speaking, you have a wife. And if you have a wife, then logically speaking, you're heterosexual." "Yes, yes, I do have a wife, and I am heterosexual." "Wow, I can't believe you found out all of that, just because you knew I had a weed whacker," Jim exclaimed. "Yeah, that's what logic is," the dean responded. Jim excitedly went back to the bar, awaited by Bob. Bob, I'm taking 4 classes in college: English, math, science, and logic, Jim told Bob. Logic? Bob asks. And what the hell is that? Here, I'll give you an example. Do you own a weed whacker? No. Then you're gay. An old man was walking in the desert with his donkey when he reached a village. The people welcomed him with everything they could, offering him hospitality, taking care of his donkey, and feeding him. While having dinner, he was surprised to be offered camel milk, as it is of notoriously bad taste. He thus asked about it and was told that the village had been cursed with an everlasting drought, and that the people had resorted to saving whatever little water they could find for crops. Truth be told, I am one of the wise, he said. I know how to bring you rain. However, you must first bring me a wide bucket full of water, for I need some to bring more. The next morning, all of the villagers heard of his saying and started collecting every drop of water they still had in reserve. In the end, there was barely enough to qualify for a bucket, and they gave it to the man. He then took the water and walked within his host's house. There, he took off his dirty clothes and started washing them. A curious one of the kids saw him through the window and went on to alert everyone around. By the time they arrived, angry and shouting, it was already too late. The old man had washed all his clothes and was calmly hanging them. Shame. Shame on you, old man, for wasting our water when our kids don't have enough to drink, growled the chief. But as soon as he finished speaking, the sky darkened as the clouds gathered around the village. It started raining, and it did not stop for 5 days straight. People got their fill, and everyone's reserves were overflowing. The old man was treated as a guest of honor and a hero, and the chief apologized profusely for ever doubting him. Only when he was about to leave had the kid gathered the courage to ask about how he did it. It's simple, said the old man. This always happens when I hang my clothes to dry. A woman went into a doctor's office with a baby. She's taken into an examining room and waits for the doctor. The doctor examines the baby and finds him not gaining much weight and asks the woman, "Is he breastfed or on the bottle?" "Oh, he is breastfed," replied the woman. "Well then, strip down to your waist," orders the doctor. She takes off her top and bra and sits on the examining table. The doc starts pressing, kneading, and pinching both breasts for quite a while, in a very detailed and thorough examination. After a few minutes of this, the doctor motions to her to get dressed. Then he says, "No wonder this baby is so hungry. You don't have any milk." The woman responds with a wry grin. "Well, of course I don't. A coont." "Why is that?" asks the doctor in surprise. "Well, I'm his aunt, but I'm sure glad I brought him in today." A man goes in for an interview for a job as a TV news broadcaster. The interview went quite well with one problem. He kept winking at the camera. The interviewer said, "Although you have a lot of the qualities we're looking for, the fact that you keep winking is a real problem. I'm afraid we won't be able to hire you unless you get it under control." "Oh, that's no problem," said the man. "If I take a couple of aspirin, I stop winking for a couple of hours. More than enough time to get the broadcast done." "All right, show me," said the interviewer. So the man reached into his pocket. First he put his hand in his right pocket, and as he took it out, he pulled out loads of condoms of every variety and size, but no pills. Next, he dug into his left pocket and again pulled out an embarrassing amount of condoms in all shapes and colors, before finally finding the packet of aspirin. He took the aspirin, and the second take went without a single hitch. The interviewer said, "That's amazing. I'd hire you on the spot, except that we're not in the habit of hiring such womanizers. We've had too many sexual harassment suits." "Excuse me," exclaimed the man. "I'm a happily married man, not a womanizer." "Well, how do you explain all the condoms then?" asked the interviewer. The man sighed. "Have you ever tried going into a pharmacy, asking for aspirin and winking all the while?" An 85-year-old couple, having been married almost 60 years, had died in a car crash. They had been in good health the last 10 years, mainly due to her interest in health, food, and exercise. When they reached the pearly gates, St. Peter took them to their mansion, which was decked out with a beautiful kitchen, a master bath suite, and a jacuzzi. As they oohed and ahed, the old man asked Peter how much all this was going to cost. "It's free," Peter replied. "This is heaven." Next, they went out back to survey the championship golf course that the home backed up to. They would have golfing privileges every day, And each week the course changed to a new one representing the great golf courses on Earth. The old man asked, "What are the green fees?" Peter's reply, "This is heaven. You play for free." Next, they went to the clubhouse and saw the lavish buffet lunch with the cuisines of the world laid out. "How much to eat?" asked the old man. "Don't you understand yet? This is heaven. It is free," Peter replied with some exasperation. "Well, where are the low-fat and low-cholesterol tables?" the old man asked timidly. Peter lectured, "That's the best part. You can eat as much as you like of whatever you like, and you never get fat and you never get sick. This is heaven." With that, the old man went into a fit of anger, throwing down his hat and stomping on it, shrieking wildly. Peter and his wife both tried to calm him down, asking him what was wrong. The old man looked at his wife and said, "This is all your fault. If it weren't for your blasted bran muffins, I could have been here 10 years ago." A woman joins a country club and one day hears the guys talking about their golf round. She says, "I played on my college's golf team. I was pretty good. Mind if I join you next week?" No one wants to say yes, but they're on the spot. Finally, one man says, "Okay, but we start at 6:30 a.m. He figures the early tea time will discourage her. The woman says this may be a problem and asks if she can be up to 15 minutes late. They roll their eyes but say, "Okay." She's there at 6:30 a.m. sharp and beats all of them with an eye-opening 2 under par round. She's fun and pleasant, and the guys are impressed. They congratulate her and invite her back the next week. She smiles and says, "I'll be there at 6:30 or 6:45. The next week she again shows up at 6:30 sharp. Only this time, she plays left-handed. The three guys are incredulous, as she still beats them with an even par round, despite playing with her offhand. They're totally amazed. They can't figure her out. She's very pleasant and a gracious winner. They invite her back again, but each man harbors a burning desire to beat her. The third week, she's 15 minutes late, which irritates the guys. This week, she plays right-handed and narrowly beats all three of them. The men grumble that her late arrival is petty gamesmanship on her part. However, she's so charming and complimentary of their strong play, they can't hold a grudge. This woman is a riddle no one can figure out. After the game, they decided to have a couple of beers in the clubhouse. Finally, one of the men asks her, "How do you decide if you're going to golf right-handed or left-handed?" The lady blushes and grins. "Well, I'm ambidextrous," she replies. "I like to switch back and forth. When I got married after college, I discovered my husband always sleeps in the nude. Right before I leave in the morning for golf practice, I pull the covers off him. If his willy points to the right, I golf right-handed. If it points to the left, I golf left-handed." The guys think this is hysterical and bursts into laughter. Astonished at this bizarre information, one of them asks, "What if it's pointing straight up?" Then I'm 15 minutes late. Two mental patients, Jim and Neil, are sitting and playing checkers in the game room. Jim says, "Wow, don't ask what a terrible dream I had yesterday. I'm in New York. I get on the train on the way to you in Boston, fall asleep, and arrive in Chicago. Get on the train from Chicago to Boston, fall asleep again, and wake up in New York. It was back and forth like that all night long." Neil laughs and says, "I had an amazing dream yesterday and I met a beautiful, famous woman." Jim gets excited, asking, "Who?" Neil answers him, "Beyonce. And what is she telling me? Can I come in to warm up?" "Well, so what did you say?" Jim asks. "I said to her, 'Why not? Let's have some fun.' She went in, took off her clothes, went into the shower, and came out with a towel to hug me on the couch." "Wow, what a dream," says Jim with a hint of envy. "Wait, that's not all," adds the other. "The second we sit down, another knock on the door. I open it, and who's standing in the entrance, wet from the rain?" "Well, who?" asks Jim enthusiastically. "Scarlett Johansson. She also wants to go in to warm up. She goes in, takes off her clothes, takes a shower, and comes to warm up with us on a sofa. And all night I'm thinking, what the heck am I going to do with two of them?" "What kind of friend are you?" complains Jim. "Couldn't you have called me? Isn't one beautiful, famous girl enough for you?" "You think I didn't try?" shouts Neil, suddenly upset. "I called you all night, but you? New York to Chicago, Chicago to New York, New York to Chicago." An Irishman walks into the confessional at St. Patrick's Catholic Church. "Father, it's been a month since my last confession. I had relations with Fanny Green twice last month. The priest sighs but nods. You are forgiven, my son. Say 3 Hail Marys and sin no more. A short while later, another Irishman enters the confessional. Father, it's been 2 months since my last confession. I've had relations with Fanny Green twice a week for the past 2 months. The priest furrows his brow. Who is this Fanny Green? A new woman in the neighborhood, Father. The man replies. The priest sighs again. Very well. Say 10 Hail Marys and try to mend your ways. The next morning, as the priest prepares to deliver his sermon, a tall, drop-dead, gorgeous redhead walks into the church. Every man in the congregation watches as she struts up the aisle, her emerald green dress hugging every curve. Her legs shimmer in the light, and her matching green high heels click against the floor as she sits right in front of the priest. As she crosses her legs, the priest and the altar boy both realize, with wide eyes, that she isn't wearing any underwear. The priest, struggling to keep his composure, leans over to the altar boy and whispers, Tell me, Johnny, is that Fanny Green? Little Johnny, bug-eyed and barely able to breathe, whispers back, No, Father, I think it's just a reflection from her shoes. A big city lawyer went duck hunting in rural North Alberta. He shot and dropped a bird, but it fell into a farmer's field on the other side of a fence. As the lawyer climbed over the fence, an elderly farmer drove up on his tractor and asked him what he was doing. The litigator responded, I shot a duck and it fell in this field, and now I'm going to retrieve it. The old farmer, Peter, replied, This is my property and you are not coming over here. The indignant lawyer said, I'm one of the best trial lawyers in Canada, and if you don't let me get that duck, I'll sue you and take everything you own. The old farmer smiled and said, Apparently, you don't know how we settle disputes in Alberta. We settle small disagreements like this with the 3-kick rule. The lawyer asked, What is the 3-kick rule? The farmer replied, Well, because the dispute occurs on my land, I get to go first. I kick you 3 times and then you kick me 3 times, and so on, back and forth, until someone gives up. The lawyer thought about the proposed contest and decided that he could easily take the old codger. He agreed to abide by the local custom. The old farmer slowly climbed down from the tractor and walked up to the attorney. His first kick planted the toe of his heavy steel-toed work boot into the lawyer's groin and dropped him to his knees. His second kick to the midriff sent the lawyer's last meal gushing from his mouth. The lawyer was on all fours when the farmer's third kick to his rear end sent him face first into a fresh cow pie. Summoning every bit of his will and remaining strength, the lawyer very slowly managed to get to his feet. Wiping his face with the arm of his jacket, he said, Okay, you old fart. Now it's my turn. The old farmer smiled and said, You can have the duck. Many years ago, there were 2 sisters, one blonde and one brunette, who inherited the family ranch. Unfortunately, after just a few years, they are in financial trouble. In order to keep the bank from repossessing the ranch, they need to purchase a bull from a stockyard in a faraway town so that they can breed their own stock. They only have $600 left. Upon leaving, the brunette tells her sister, When I get there, if I decide to buy the bull, I'll contact you to drive out after me and haul it home. The brunette arrives at the stockyard, inspects the bull, and decides she wants to buy it. The man tells her that he will sell it for $599, no less. After paying him, she drives to the nearest town to send her sister a telegram to tell her the news. She walks into the telegraph office and says, I want to send a telegram to my sister telling her that I've bought a bull for our ranch. I need her to hitch the trailer to our pickup truck and drive out here so we can haul it home. The telegraph operator explains that he'll be glad to help her, then adds, It's just 99 cents a word. Well, after paying for the bull, the brunette only has $1 left. She realizes that she'll only be able to send her sister one word. After a few minutes of thinking, she nods and says, I want you to send her the word comfortable. The operator shakes his head. How is she ever going to know that you want her to hitch the trailer to your pickup truck and drive out here to haul that bull back to your ranch if you send her just the word comfortable? The brunette explains, My sister's blonde. The word's big. She'll read it very slowly. Comfortable. A traveling salesman whose car has broken down goes to the door of the closest farmhouse. The farmer says, You can spend the night, but you'll have to share a room with my daughter. The daughter, a gorgeous 20-something, winks at him over her father's shoulder. "Oh, I don't mind that," exclaims the salesman. "Just one thing," says the farmer. "No funny business. If you touch her, I'll kill you." "Oh, no, sir," says the salesman. "You can count on me." Just to be safe, the farmer builds a wall of eggs between the two beds in the daughter's room. To get through, one of them would have to break them. However, in the middle of the night, the salesman can no longer control himself, busts through the eggs, and he and the willing farmer's daughter spend some passionate time together. They break all the eggs in the process. When they're done, they spend the rest of the night piecing the eggs back together one by one and rebuilding the wall. They couldn't get the yolks in, so they just glued the shells together and threw away the rest. So there was a wall of empty eggs. The next morning, the farmer goes to his daughter's room and takes a couple of eggs to the kitchen to make breakfast. However, all the eggs he tries turn out empty. When the salesman wakes up, he goes down and is surprised to find the farmer staring out the window at his chickens, holding a shotgun. "What are you doing?" asks the man. The farmer continues to stare. "I think one of my roosters is using a condom." A pretty blonde woman is driving down a country road in her new sports car when something goes wrong and it breaks down. Luckily, she happens to be near a farmhouse. She goes up to the farmhouse and knocks on the door. When the farmer answers, she says to him, "It's Sunday night and my car broke down. I don't know what to do. Can I stay here for the night until tomorrow when I can get some help?" "Well," drawls the farmer, "you can stay here, but I don't want you messing with my sons, Jed and Luke." She looks through the screen door and sees two men standing behind the farmer. She judges them to be in their early 20s. "Okay," she says. After they have gone to bed for the night, the woman begins to get a little horny, just thinking about the two boys in the room next to her. So she quietly goes into their room and says, "Boys, how would you like for me to teach you the ways of the world?" They say, "Huh?" She says, "The only thing is, I don't want to get pregnant, so you have to wear these rubbers." She puts them on the boys, and the three of them go at it all night long. 5 years later, Jed and Luke are sitting on the front porch, rocking back and forth. Jed says, "You remember that blonde woman that came by here about 5 years ago and showed us the ways of the world?" "Yes," says Luke, "I remember." "Well, do you care if she gets pregnant?" "Nope," says Luke, "I reckon not." "Then let's take these bloody things off." It just happens that a long time ago, and for the first time in their lives, two country boys take their first flight from Florida to New York. While they're talking to each other, they get interrupted by an announcement from the pilot. "Sorry to disturb you all, but I think it's best you know one of our engines has failed. Don't worry, we can still make it on 3 engines, but there'll be a delay of 1 hour." So they begin talking again, but soon another announcement is heard. "We regret to inform you that our second engine has failed, which will mean another delay of 1 hour, but don't worry, we'll still make it." So the two grumble a bit, but not for long, as the pilot's voice is heard again after a few minutes. "Unfortunately, our third engine has failed, meaning there'll be a delay of another hour to the journey." One of them turns to his friend and says, "Well, darn, if that last engine fails, we'll be up here all night." Two couples were playing a round of poker one summer night when one of the husbands, Bob, accidentally dropped a few of his chips on the floor. As he bent down to retrieve them, he couldn't help but notice that Jay's wife, Kate, was touching him with her foot in a very obvious way. Later, Bob went into the kitchen to get some refreshments. Kate followed him and asked, "Do you like what you see?" Surprised by her boldness, Bob courageously admitted that, well, yes, he did. She said, "You can have it, but it will cost you $10,000. After taking a minute or two to assess the financial and moral costs of this offer, Bob indicated that he was indeed interested. She told him that since her husband Jay works Friday afternoons and Bob doesn't, Bob should be at her house around 2 p.m. Friday afternoon. When Friday rolls around, Bob shows up at Jay's house to make love to Jay's wife at 2 p.m. sharp, and after paying her the agreed-upon $10,000, they go to her bedroom and have a great time, just as Kate had promised. Afterwards, Bob quickly dresses and leaves. As was his habit at 6 p.m., Jay returned home from work. Upon entering the house and encountering his wife, he asked loudly, "Did Bob come by with my money?" With a lump in her throat, his wife answered, "Oh yeah, he did stop by here for a few minutes this afternoon." Her heart nearly skipped a beat when Jay curtly asked, "And did he give you $10,000? In terror, she assumed she'd somehow been found out and after mustering up her best poker face, she replied, "Well, yes, in fact, he did give me $10,000. Jay, with a satisfied look on his face, surprised Kate by saying, "Good, I was hoping so. Bob came by my office last night and borrowed $10,000 from me. He promised me he'd stop by this afternoon on his way home and pay me back."